Good morning. We are still pursuing all these people of faith that are mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11. And we come to a verse in verse 29, which has sparked a thought in my mind this morning. It says here, just by faith, the people crossed the Red Sea as if on dry land. But the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. Now, we know the story, don't we? We know that the people had experienced all these plagues in Egypt that God sent Moses to give to the Egyptians. And finally, the Egyptians had let them go. And they escaped and they left, and then the Egyptians changed their minds and decided to pursue them and bring them back. And in front of them was the Red Sea. And Moses did his wonderful, act of faith, I think. It doesn't say, and Moses by faith divided the Red Sea. I would have thought that would be the thing that was by faith, that Moses stood at the side of the sea and lifted up his staff towards it, and the sea divided. But it doesn't say that as an act of faith. It was the act of faith by the people walking through the Red Sea as if on dry land. Now there were a lot of them, and the sea was wide. It was not a brook. It was a large body of water. And I am certain that as they went across the Red Sea, they could see the wall of water that was held back. And I was thinking as I was reading this, it's one thing to have faith for a miracle that occurs in a short space of time, but it's something else to believe for a miracle that takes a long time to happen. And this miracle took a long time to happen because they had to all cross the Red Sea with this wall of water on either side that could at any moment come down upon them. There was nothing holding the water up except the power of God. And I think that's what the writer to the Hebrews is talking about here when it says, by faith the people crossed the Red Sea as if on dry land, because they walked across with the wall of water on either side. And they walked across at the speed, presumably, of the youngest children and the oldest people. They were not all riding donkeys or mules or horses or chariots. They were walking. It took a long time to cross the Red Sea. And that was my thought really today, was sometimes it takes time for the thing that God is doing on our behalf to happen. And we have to walk in faith for some distance, time-wise, as it were. They walked for some distance on dry land, but also it would have taken hours for all these people to cross the Red Sea. There were so many of them. And it is something to believe God for a miracle, but it's another thing to believe God for a miracle while the miracle is coming about, while it is happening, and not to think at some point it's all going to fall down like a pack of cards, or the water is all going to rush in and we're going to be drowned. But they all walked through by faith, and the Egyptians were right behind them, and they saw the last of them coming up out of the river. And they chased them. They thought, well, if they can do it, we can do it. But of course the power of God brought the water back, and all the Egyptians were drowned because they were not part of God's people, and they were not part of God's plan. We are. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because they crossed the Red Sea, and part of what they experienced was miraculous, and part was ordinary every day. They were walking. They were not transported from one side of the Red Sea to the other, miraculously, with the Egyptians left on the other side. That wasn't how God chose to do it. He could have done, couldn't he? He could have just whisked the whole lot of them up and planted them on the other side of the Red Sea. He could have done, couldn't he? Sometimes the things that God does for us are completely and utterly miraculous. And other times they require us to do our bit. And for these people to get to the other side of the Red Sea, they had to walk through it in the face of death at every moment, in the face of those waters held back that could have discharged at any moment. And they had to walk across by faith. But they had to walk. They had to do it. They couldn't just stand one side and say, oh, that's great. Could you just take me to the other side, Lord? I don't really want to walk underneath those mountains of water. But the walking was natural. But the holding back of the water was supernatural. And sometimes we have to do our own physical bit while God does his supernatural bit. And between the two of us, we see great miracles happening, and we experience them, and we live them, and they transform our lives. That's my thought for the day anyway. That it's not always all supernatural. It's not always all natural. It's a bit of both. And that we should be the sort of people who expect the miraculous, the supernatural in our lives. But I must confess that I am still at the stage in my walk with the Lord where when something supernatural happens, I am filled with gratitude and thanksgiving and joy and a bit surprised that God has stepped in on my behalf when we shouldn't be. We are his children, and when we need rescuing and when we need looking after and we need protecting, he is there for us, and he will move on our behalf supernaturally. So that's my thought on that verse 29. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow. Be blessed. Bye-bye.